So, as you probably know by now, in these Sangha Nights up to the new year, our theme is, we've called it Tantra for the modern world. So we're looking at what Tantric Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, was getting at, and how we can get some of that in our practice. So we're not going to sort of try and do the same things necessarily that people did in medieval India or Tibet, but what was it getting at? How can we get some of that? And when I introduced that theme a few weeks ago, I said that Tantric Buddhism, or Vajrayana Buddhism, was a late form of Buddhism that evolved around sometime after the year 500 of the Christian era. So 1,000 years after the historical Buddha. And it seems to have developed as a sort of compensation for some aspects of later Mahayana Buddhism, which had maybe got so sort of idealistic and archetypal and cosmic that they didn't seem to have much to do anymore with day-to-day practice, day-to-day experience in our everyday lives. So at that time, when I introduced this theme, I identified 5 features, if you like, of Tantric Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism. The first is that it is about direct experience. So it's about the direct experiences of life. The second is that it uses symbols and magic. And I'll say a bit more about that later. The third is that it's very concerned with energy. It's very concerned with energy. The fourth is that it uses the strongest experiences of life as ways of propelling us, powering us towards enlightenment. And the fourth is the one I'm going to talk about tonight, starting at the highest, which means, it brings the goal of the spiritual life, as it were, into our present experience. Asks us to act now like an enlightened being. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to look at the fourth of these, that Tantra uses the strongest experiences of life to power us. We'll be asking, how can we do that? How can we use those experiences to stir up our energy and use that to power our practice towards enlightenment? So next week, Vadanya is going to give a talk called Blood, Bones and Fire, which is about using the energy of anger and fear. And then the week after that, Maitradasa is going to give a talk called When Things Fall Apart, which is about using the energies that are stirred up when, our life really doesn't go the way we want it to, when life seems to all go wrong, when we hit challenges and adversity and don't know quite what to do. So those are the next 2 weeks. But this week I'm going to talk about how we can use another of the strongest experiences of life, the experience of falling in love. But this talk, as well as the next 2, also sort of connect with the second of these, that Tantra uses symbols and magic. Tantra uses symbols and magic. I said when I introduced this series that Tantric Buddhism grew out of a tradition of folk magic, if you like, sort of shamanism and folk magic. Magic, shamanism, they were important parts of life in India at that time, as they still are in many parts of the world today. I don't know if any of you have ever been to West Africa. It's certainly a very, very important part of life, for example. And what this sort of magic does is it uses rituals, rites, spells, what we call spells, to raise up really strong emotional energies, to really get our emotions stirred up, and then to focus those energies on making something we want to happen. Focusing those energies and those volitions. So I don't know, a spell might cause you have to go into a graveyard at night and dig up the skull of a convicted murderer who's recently been buried. And then use some ritual to sort of focus all the energy stirred up by that on destroying your enemy or making your business prosper. So if you go into if you do that, if you go into a graveyard at night and dig up the skull of a convicted murderer, it's not going to be a sort of mild experience. You're not going to think, oh, well, we'll go and get a takeaway. You're not going to do that in a casual state of mind, okay? It's going to bring out all sorts of fear and horror. Strong emotional energy. It's going to really raise the emotional voltage to a level we don't usually experience. And then there'll be rituals, rites, spells, if you like, to focus those energies that have been raised on some goal that we wish to do. May my enemy destroyed. May my enterprise succeed and flourish. Whatever. So, yeah, in our culture, we tend to dismiss this sort of magic as superstitious nonsense. But I actually don't think it's perhaps as silly as it might seem. I don't think we should underestimate, maybe, the power of focusing, raising a lot of emotional energy and then focusing that on achieving something. I think that can be quite a powerful thing to do. So we saw that Tantra grew out of that sort of tradition. It grew out of that sort of tradition. And what it was to transmute this sort of magical practice from the worldly sphere to the spiritual sphere. So instead of using spells and rites to raise strong energies and then focus them on achieving some worldly goal, what the Tantra did was do something similar, raise strong energies and focus them on achieving spiritual goals. Instead of, may my enemy be destroyed, may this obstacle to my practice be overcome. Instead of, may my business flourish, may this quality that I'm seeking to develop grow and flourish. So I don't know. I can't put my hand on my heart and say I absolutely know that we can achieve worldly ends by focusing our energies on making them happen. I can't actually say that. I don't think it's completely beyond the bounds of possibility, but I can't actually say that. But I'm completely sure that raising strong emotional energy and then focusing that on achieving spiritual goals is going to work, because we're talking about our inner world here. So Tantric Buddhism adopted 4 sorts of magical rites that were used in traditional village magic, if you like, and it adapted these to spiritual ends. So these 4 rites were called the path of destruction, the path of prospering, the path of the rite of destruction, the rite of prospering, the rite of pacification, and the rite of fascination. So the rite of destruction. In worldly terms, in worldly magic, that would be something like, may my enemy be destroyed. People used to cast spells to destroy their enemies. But this was transmuted in Tantric Buddhism into, as I said, may this obstacle to my progress be overcome, be destroyed. May this habit or mental tendency that holds me back, may that be destroyed. May this delusion and unclarity be cut through. So if you've come across the mandala of the 5 Buddhas, this rite of destruction was particularly associated with the blue Buddha Akshobhya and his symbol of the Vajra, the diamond thunderbolt that destroys all obstacles, cuts through all unclarity. So that's the first one, the rite of destruction. Then there was the rite of prospering. So as I've said, people might use spells to increase their prosperity. May my business grow and prosper. Or may my clan or my family grow and prosper. And this was transmuted by the Tantra, transformed into, may this positive quality that I wish to develop grow and blossom. Or may the Sangha grow and blossom. May we create a rich, nurturing environment in which we can all grow and blossom. And once again, for those who know about the mandala of the five Buddhas, this, of course, was particularly associated with the Buddha Ratnasambhava, the golden yellow Buddha Ratnasambhava, whose symbol is a jewel, prosperity. And then thirdly, there was the rite of pacification. So people would maybe cast spells so that maybe a dangerous stallion could be pacified. So that its wild energy could be tamed and it could be ridden and used maybe to charge into battle. Or so that the weather would be pacified if you were going on an ocean voyage, so that the weather would be pacified and the winds would be propitious. Instead of the winds harming you, they would blow you in the right direction quickly to where you want to go. So there was that sort of worldly rite of pacification that people would do. And this was transformed into, well, may this negative energy that's subverting my progress be pacified so that it can be trained and used to help my progress, in the same way that a stallion might be trained and used, or the winds might be trained, might be pacified and used. And this rite of pacification was, of course, particularly associated with the green Buddha, Amoghasiddhi. Green being a very calming, pacifying colour. And then fourthly, we have the rite that I'm going to be talking about tonight, which is the rite of fascination. So in traditional magic, people would cast spells to make someone they desired fall in love with them. They would cast love spells. They would make love potions, and so on. And the Tantra transformed this sort of rite in the same way that it did the other three. Right. The Tantra transformed this sort of casting love spells to make people fall in love with you. It transformed that. And that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. So that's why tonight's talk is called Falling in Love, the Tantric Rite of Fascination. And these rites of fascination were particularly associated with the red Buddha Amitabha, the Buddha of love and passion. Red being the colour of love and passion. The Buddha whose symbol is the very, very beautiful, enchanting lotus flower. So Tantric Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, use the energy that we get when we fall in love, which is certainly, I think, one of the strongest experiences of life. It uses that energy to help us to move towards enlightenment. Falling in love is powerful. It's overwhelming. It can overwhelm our common sense. It can cause us to abandon everything we thought our life was about and go and do something completely different just so we can be with our beloved. Suddenly our life is all about this wonderful person, this other wonderful person. I wonder if you can remember a time when you were in love. Maybe you are now. Or if not, maybe you can remember a time when you're in love. What did it feel like? What did it feel like? Well, when we're in love, the beloved seems completely fascinating to us. We are under the spell of the rite of fascination. We are bewitched, bedazzled, beglamoured. When we look at them, we see something wonderful. We see a sort of paradise, like everything would be fine. Everything would be absolutely wonderful if we could be with them. If we could only be with them all the time, we would have found our happiness. So we want to be with them all the time, and we feel sad and empty when we're parted from them. We think about them a lot, maybe all the time. Maybe we even dream about them. Maybe we bore other people to death. And they're thinking, yeah, what's so special? But they're really special to us. To us, they seem completely special, wonderful for a while. And then in a few months or a few years, the spell starts to wear a bit thin. The fascination starts to wear a bit thin. We start to see through the bedazzlement to the real person behind it. We start to see that, well, they aren't so special after all. We start to notice they've actually got flaws and faults and irritating habits, like everybody else. And at this point we have two choices. If we've been conned by the romantic myth that our society holds up so highly, then we might think, okay, our love has died. We've fallen out of love. I must find my true love this time. This time I'll find true love, and that will last forever. So, there's a song by Carole King, I'm showing my age here, there's a song by Carole King where she says, I've forgotten what it was in you that fed the need in me. And she says this, she sings this with blame in her voice, as though it was the other person's fault. A poor person, it had nothing to do with the other person, it had absolutely nothing to do with the other person. They'd been the same all the time. It's just that at first she had been under the spell of the rite of fascination. She'd been under the spell of falling in love. She saw some sort of glamorized version of her beloved, and then that spell wore off and she started to see the real person behind the bedazzlement. I've forgotten what it was in you that fed the need in me, and it's your fault. So that's one thing we can do when the spell wears off. We can look for someone else to fall in love with. And that will probably go on and on and on. You see sometimes people who do that over and over again. Or else we can forget about being in love and start to actually love the other person, rather than our illusion about them. There is a huge difference between being in love and loving another person, actually loving another person. One is about a beglamoured fantasy, where we're in relationship with something that is in our eyes, not in them. And the other is about a real connection with a real human being with all their faults and all their flaws and all their irritating habits. So hopefully what happens is we fall in love, and then that transmutes into loving the other person as they actually are, and not as we sort of want to see them. So what's behind all this? I mean, what is this falling in love all about? I mean, maybe we need to ask that. If we're going to use this sort of experience, what's it all about? What's falling in love all about? Why do we human beings do it? I don't think dogs do it. Certain cats don't do it. I suppose dogs fall in love with their owners, don't they? They think they're wonderful. But why do we do it? Okay, so one cynical response I've heard to this, why do human beings fall in love, is that it is nature's way of conning us into having babies and bringing up families. So being in love lasts long enough to produce the babies, and then we're stuck with it. Shock horror, blasphemy against the romantic myth. But maybe that is a bit cynical. Maybe that is a little bit cynical. And anyway, falling in love isn't always about heterosexual desire. Gay people fall in love with each other. We can be in love with people we have absolutely no intention of having sex with. We can even fall in love with objects. We might think this new, really snazzy car, yes, really, oh, isn't it wonderful? You know, it's got an aura about it, like the beloved has an aura about it. It's wonderful, it has all sorts of amazing qualities. It will bring us happiness. When in fact, all it will do is get us from A to B for a while. So maybe there is more to it than just being a trick of nature to get us to have babies. Maybe this thing that we human beings do, called falling in love, is showing us, is pointing us towards something important. Maybe. So, what all the things and all the people we fall in love with have in common, seem to have in common, is that as far as we're concerned, they seem to be offering us true happiness. They seem to be offering us true happiness. When we see our beloved, it's as though we see paradise. We see happiness forever. But of course, these people or these things that we fall in love with can't really offer us true lasting happiness. We will fall out of love with them, and the spring will go out of our step. And anyway, even if they've got really terrific positive qualities, independent of anything we see in them, they will change. They will eventually let us down, because all conditioned things are impermanent. Only the unconditioned will not let us down. So I think, actually, that really all this falling in love and all the longing and the desire that it gives rise to is really just a misplaced love and desire for the one thing that will bring true lasting happiness: the unconditioned, enlightenment, the transcendental, union with the nature of reality, the person we could become. We can describe it in all sorts of ways, and we don't have a very clear picture of it because we don't know what it fully is yet. We can't know what it is yet. We just have a sort of intuitive heart knowledge that it's there, that it's real, that there's something deep and real that we long for. It's a real possibility. So I think that when we look at our beloved and see a paradise of perfect happiness, what we are really seeing is the unconditioned, the transcendental. We experience a glimpse of the beauty and the wonder and the joy of, if you like, the transcendental. And we project that onto the person that we're in love with. But of course, this person or thing can't live up to that. They may have some really, really sterling good qualities. They may have some great qualities, which act as a sort of slit window through which the light of reality can shine through. But they are not that light. They are not that light. They are an ordinary human being, just the same as the rest of us. So all the things and all the people that we fall in love with and long for, they're just signposts to the one thing we really long for in the deepest part of our being, which is enlightenment, becoming the person we could become, reality itself. And I think we need to learn to look beyond these signposts to the one thing that really does deserve us falling in love with it. We need to use them as pointers. And if we do that, we will move towards enlightenment. Being in love, all that desire and all that longing, it carries enormous energy. I mean, if you cast your mind back to being in love, what's it like? There's terrific energy there. And we think of the time and the energy we put into forming a relationship with that person, and all that mental space and the angst and the it's a really powerful experience. If we put anything like that energy into forming a relationship with the enlightened mind, with reality, we will link ourselves to it. We will get close to it in just the same way that we try to get close to a human being that we're in love with. Okay, so I think the question we need to ask is, how do we open ourselves up to falling more in love with the transcendental, with the enlightened mind, with reality? How do we practice the rite of fascination on ourselves? Seems a strange thing to do. So how do we make ourselves fall in love with the transcendental? Well, okay, when I was thinking about this, I thought that one thing that characterizes our experience of falling in love is that it is an experience of some form of beauty. And that this beauty brings us pleasure. So we've got, the male experience of feminine beauty and grace. It seems so enchanting to us men. We've got the female response to maybe a different sort of physical beauty in men. And then we've got our deeper response to beautiful characteristics in people, beautiful aspects of their personality, beautiful behaviour in the people we love. And all these experiences of beauty, whether sort of physical or higher experiences of beauty of personality, they all give us pleasure. They all give us pleasure, as well as a sort of longing to unite ourselves with that thing that we find beautiful. So I think that whenever we see or hear or experience beauty in any way, in our beloved or in the world about us, what we are seeing is a dim glimpse or an echo of the beauty of the transcendental, the beauty of the enlightened mind, the beauty of reality. So if we want to fall more in love with the enlightened mind, more in love with reality, we need to consciously seek out these experiences of beauty. And we need to seek out the pleasure that gives us, wherever we find it. This means that we need to consciously put ourselves in situations where we know we experience beauty as an important part of our practice. That is part of our practice. We don't necessarily take that on board, but it's just as much part of our practice as meditation, for example. We need to seek out the beauty we find. This might be beauty, it might be beauty in nature. We need to get out into nature if that's where we find our beauty. It might be beauty in music, then we need to use the beauty we find in music as part of our practice. It might be the beauty we see in great art and architecture. Experiencing that beauty, that is part of our practice. It's important. It's something we should seek out. It's strengthening our connection to the beauty of reality that lies behind all those other glimpses of beauty. It's helping us to fall more and more in love with reality, if you like, in the same way as seeing the beauty of our beloved. And I think we also need to sort of learn a few things about noticing beauty, actually. We need to pay attention. We need to look at the world with eyes that see the beauty. We need to listen with ears that hear the beauty. We need to learn to pay attention. Often the world just passes us by because we don't pay attention to it. So I think we need to experience beauty, cultivate the experience of beauty in all its forms as fully as we can. But I think also at the same time we need to see those experiences of beauty and pleasure, the pleasure that gives us, as pointing to something beyond themselves. We need to think of it as just a glimpse of something beyond that's far greater, that we can't put our finger on. So yes, I mean, I was looking out of the window the other day and there was some branches moving in the wind against the sort of glow of the evening sky. And it was an enchanting experience. It was a beautiful experience. It was heart-lifting. But so yeah, this sight of the autumn branches against the evening sky, glowing evening sky, it's just a tiny glimpse of something much larger that lies beyond. A small window onto something else. We can't have a clear knowledge. We can't have a clear knowledge of what this something else is because we haven't experienced it fully, but we can have an intuitive heart knowledge that it's there, and we can still use that experience of beauty and pleasure to fall more and more in love with it. What's behind that beauty? So I tried to think of an analogy for this. And the analogy I came up with was looking at a picture of somebody we love. So if we look at a picture of somebody we love, that Well, we find it beautiful. We see their beauty in that picture. We experience pleasure from doing that. It connects us to our love for that person, our longing for that person. It lifts our heart. But at the same time, we know that the picture is not the person. We know that the picture is just a signpost to the person beyond. The person we love is much more than that picture. So we look beyond the photograph and we allow the pleasure it gives us to fuel our love for the person behind it. And I think that's what we should be doing with all our experiences of beauty, is using those experiences of beauty and pleasure to refer to what's behind it, to reality, to the enlightened mind, the transcendental. So yeah, I mean, I said we need to cultivate experiences of beauty. I mean, maybe we don't always think that's part of the spiritual life, to go and listen to concerts, to get out into nature and really experience beauty. There are ways that we need to sort of make sure that we realise those are part of the important part of the spiritual life. To fall more in love with the reality that lies behind them. But we can also do the same sort of practice, connect with beauty and pleasure in ways that are much more normally associated with the spiritual life. So for one thing, meditation. Meditation can put us in touch with a beauty and a pleasure that we maybe seldom experience in other ways. That points again to something higher. Dhyana is a strong experience of beauty and pleasure. So that's another way that we can open up to beauty and pleasure and refer it to something that maybe we can't quite get a grasp of, but it's beyond that experience. Meditation, of course, also increases our mindfulness. We do the mindfulness of breathing. It increases our ability to pay attention. It increases our mindfulness. And when we start to meditate, we see the world with clearer eyes, I think. We start to see more beauty in the world. Over and over again, running introductory classes, people have said to me that when they started meditating, they started to notice the beauty of the world much more. So meditation also links us to the beauty of the world. And it's certainly my experience that if I do a lot of meditation in very good conditions, the world can start to look beautiful wherever I look. It can just seem blissful to be almost anywhere. And then in meditation, of course, we also cultivate our capacity for metta. We cultivate metta. Metta involves love and it involves appreciation. And without love and appreciation, we don't experience beauty. We cannot experience beauty. You can't sort of go out into the countryside, for example, and try and look at the world with some sort of cold, detached mindfulness, in inverted commas, and expect to experience beauty. We experience beauty by loving what we see, by appreciating what we see. You can't expect to go to a concert and listen to music and be moved by its beauty by analysing the cleverness of the score and the way the different chords come out and the way where the key changes happen. I mean, you have to be loving that music. You have to be appreciating that music with the heart as well as the head. So the more metta we have, the more we will experience beauty. The more we will experience love and appreciation, the more we will experience beauty in the world around us, in all sorts of art, and in people. So part of the reason we meditate, I think, is that it helps us to experience the beauty of reality. It helps us to fall in love with reality. So, well, I just mentioned the beauty of other people. And that relates, I think, to another way that we can experience something that's very much part of our normal approach to the spiritual life as a way of connecting with beauty and pleasure, and that's friendship. Especially friendship with people whose qualities we admire. So some qualities, beauty isn't just about trees and sunsets and beautiful music. It's also, there's a beauty in ethics, there's a beauty in ethical qualities, there's a beauty in qualities of personality. Some qualities in people are beautiful. There's such a thing as ethical beauty. And opening up to that and appreciating it and loving and respecting that can also be part of the way we fall more in love with enlightenment. All those positive qualities point towards enlightenment, point towards what we've got the potential to become. So when we befriend somebody whose qualities we admire, or even when we just think about somebody whose qualities we admire, we're opening up to the beauty of enlightenment. If we allow ourselves to respond to the beauty of those qualities, we're connecting with the beauty of enlightenment. And I think it's significant that the Sanskrit term, the Sanskrit phrase that we translate as spiritual friendship is Kalyana Mitrata. So Mitrata means friendship, but Kalyana, which we translate as spiritual, means beautiful. So it's friendship with what is beautiful. That's spiritual friendship. And in a way we can see, I mean, the Buddha is known to have said, friendship with what is beautiful is the whole of the spiritual life. Well, that might point beyond people also to just what is beautiful in reality. So spiritual friendship, friendship with someone whose qualities we admire, is friendship with the beautiful. It's going to move us towards what's beautiful. So we can think of the spiritual life, I think, as being about redirecting our love and desire and our longing, our response to beauty, the pleasure that gives us, away from things that can't really deliver true happiness, to things that will give us, to the one thing that will give us true happiness. We can see it as, on our side, cultivating a love affair with reality. And we can do the things that we might do with our beloved. We can serve them. We can serve the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha in the sense that they represent what we love. We can make offerings. We can be generous. We can give gifts. We can do all those things. So we can do that. We can see the spiritual life as being redirecting that love and desire towards things spiritual. Tapping into our longing for what we really, really long for. But I think it is also about opening up to something that comes from beyond ourselves, at least ourselves as we normally think of ourselves, as we normally experience ourselves. So there's a term in Sanskrit, Maharaga, which is sometimes translated as great love. Great love. Raga means passion, the sort of passion we experience when we fall in love. Maha means great. It's usually translated as great, but it also means ultimate, to do with reality, transcendental. So Sangha describes Maharaga as spiritualized, even transcendental passion. This incidentally is in a book I've lost. Creative symbols of Tantric Buddhism. So all these quotes from Sangha are in Creative Symbols of Tantric Buddhism, which if you're enjoying this series, you might want to read. So he says, Maharaga is spiritualized, even transcendental passion. And he then goes on to describe it as something that comes not from us, but from reality itself, from the universe itself. So he says, Maharaga is an uninterrupted stream of powerful, positive feelings that flows spontaneously from the very heart of enlightenment in the direction of all living beings. So Maharaga is an uninterrupted stream of powerful, positive feelings that flows spontaneously from the very heart of enlightenment in the direction of all living beings. Enlightenment's in love with us. Reality is in love with us. That's what he's saying. Strikes me, he's in very similar territory to when he talks about, for those of you who've heard this term, the bodhicitta, this stream of positive volition in the universe. So yes, okay, we need to wake up our longing and our love for the enlightened mind, for transcendental reality. But we also need to open up to this positive stream of positive qualities that flows, positive feelings that flows spontaneously to us from enlightenment. Whether we practice or not, reality itself is loving us. Whether we love reality or not, reality is loving us. Reality is deeply in love with us. Well, why wouldn't it be? We are it. So why? Reality is deeply in love with us. Whenever it gets the chance, reality is using the rite of fascination on us. It's trying to get... I can't do it. I was never any good at that sort of thing. Reality is trying to get us to fall in love with it. Okay? Reality is whispering in our ears about the wonderful beings we could be, the wonderful life we could live, big, meaningful lives that we could live. Lives of freedom and deep happiness. It's whispering that in our ears. It's whispering about our connection to reality. And usually we only hear that message dimly. Maybe we don't even listen to it. We only hear it dimly if we hear it at all. We might just be aware that we've got a vague sense that we want something, that we long for something, which is big, deep and satisfying. That we can't put our finger on quite what it is. We feel the longing, and then we hook it onto other things. That person, that car, that whatever, that house, that place. We hook it onto things and people that can't really deliver. We fall in love with things that ain't going to work. So reality is whispering in our ear. And we've all experienced this subtle whispering of reality. Or why the dickens would we be here on a damp and dark November night rather than somewhere much cosier? Okay. Reality beckons. Reality beckons. Maybe you've begun to notice, maybe we've begun to notice this whispering in our ear more and more since we started practicing the Dharma. I think that's one of the things that happens. We start to notice it. We start to notice our fascination. That Dharma book's just fascinating. I used to feel in love with Dharma books. God, you should see the number I've got on my shelves. Every one of them is like... It's like the beloved. It's like the clothing of the beloved or something like that. It's like... We should notice that. We should notice that and open up to it. Feel that fascination. So this fascination, this reality whispering in our ear about who we could become, loving us, it's such an important experience that there's a Sanskrit word for it. There's a really important word for it in Buddhism, which is the word Shraddha. Now, Shraddha is usually very inappropriately translated as faith in Buddhist sort of literature. But it isn't faith as we normally think of as faith. Faith for us usually means believing certain things, especially believing certain things that are fairly unbelievable. Sangha describes Shraddha as what is ultimate in us responding to what is ultimate in the universe. It could say it's what's ultimate in us and what's ultimate in the universe in love with each other. It's that feeling. Shraddha is what we feel when reality whispers the spell of fascination in our ear. And we need to notice it, and we need to allow it to cast its spell on us. We need to notice the situations in which we experience that and go for them, put ourselves in those situations. We need to notice what we find fascinating about Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. And allow ourselves to respond with love and longing. Because this falling in love with reality is a two-sided affair. One-sided affairs aren't much fun. This is a two-sided affair. We make the effort to love what is beautiful and ethical and move towards it. But that is not an unrequited love. The universe loves us and wants us to move closer to reality too. So we can think of the spiritual life as conducting a love affair with reality, which makes it sound like much more fun.